So this time around I want to add some client-side validation, and as I said last time, I'll do one input and that should give you enough information to add validation to your heart's content. And since we're using Bootstrap, I'm going to take advantage of some of Bootstrap's validation logic, or CSS at least. So I'm on the Bootstrap site right now, and I'll go to Documentation, and I'll go to Forms, and I'll go to Validation. And I'm not going to go through this, but I'll post a link to this page on the course resources for this lecture. We're going to take advantage of Bootstrap's CSS. So let's get started. I'm going to go back to my IDE, and I'm looking at editmovie.js, and I'll go to the very top. And the first thing I'm going to do is, in my state, I'm going to put somewhere to hold errors. And it's just going to be an array. So initially, it'll be empty. Errors, plural, and I'll make it an empty array. Then I'm going to scroll down a bit. And right here on the handle submit, wherever that is, here it is. We're going to do our validation right here. So I'll just put a comment in. Client-side validation. Okay? And what I'll do is declare a local variable called errors, and it will be equal to an empty array. And then I'll say if this.state.movie.title, which is the one field that I'm going to make required, so I'll do some validation on that. If that's equal to absolutely nothing, if it's exactly equal to nothing, then I'm going to say errors.push title. So I'll push the name of that field to my array. Okay? And then underneath that, I will say this.setState, and I'm going to set errors equal to my local variable, errors, which will be empty if there are no errors, but will have one value in it, title, if there's nothing in the title field. So I push that. And below that, I just do a simple if statement. If errors.length is greater than 0, then I'll return false. I won't go any further. Otherwise, we keep going. So we'll just do our post as normal. So this is where the actual validation takes place. Now clearly, there's more information than that required. So down here, after my handle change and before my component did mount, and I'm just picking that spot at random, I'm going to write another function called hasError. And if there is an error, and we're going to pass it a variable or an argument key, what we're going to do is return this.state.errors.indexOf key not exactly equal to -1. So it's true or false. If we find an error for that particular key, it returns the index of it in the array that's in our state, the errors array. And at this point, all we have to do is make some changes to our input for title right here. And what I'm going to do is simply pass it some more properties. So we'll have to make changes to the input element, or the code for that input in a moment, but I'll just push the information right now. So I'm going to add class name as a property, and that's going to be equal to this.hasError, and we're going to call it using title, the name of this field, and we'll simply do this. So what I'm saying, if there's an error, then set the class name property to isInvalid, otherwise set it to nothing. And isInvalid is the class name we're going to use to change the appearance of that particular field on the form with Bootstrap's classes. So type will stay the same, name will stay the same. We're going to go down here now and just add a little bit more information. I'm going to add one called errordiv. And that will be equal to, similar to the first one, this.hasError. And again, we'll pass it title. And this time we'll add text danger. Otherwise, we'll add d-none. It used to be hidden in Bootstrap 4, but now it's d-none. Do not display this element. And we're also going to add one final thing, and that will be under error message. I'll call it error MSG. And that will be equal to whatever I want the error message to be. Please enter a title. Okay, so that's it for the input, and that's all the changes I need at this level to perform client-side validation. But I still need to make some changes to input.js. So here, I've opened up input.js. And what I'm going to do is below the overall input, but before the closing div, I'll add another div. And its class name will be equal to, from my properties, the error div. And inside of that div, I'll put from my properties, the error message. Okay, so this is where the error message will appear. And initially, because there's no error, it will have the class of dNone, which will make it hidden. So now back on the input, we need to add a few more things. At the top here, just before ID, I'll put it right at the very top, just before type, I'll put one called class name. Actually, it's right here. I have class name. I just need to modify this one. This will go away. And we'll change it to, in curly braces, and then in backticks, because I'm going to use JavaScript templates, form-control, that will always be there, and then in a $sign with curly brackets, props.classname. And that should be it for that one. Okay, so that actually should work. So let's go back and look at our application right here. And I'll reload this just to make sure it's current. And I'll try submitting this. And as you can see, it says, please enter a title, and gives the nice Bootstrap formatting on this required field. But if I put something in there, and this is my only required field, at this point, it should call our REST backend. And it does. Okay, so that is an example of client-side validation. And as I said, it's pretty simple to implement this for all of the various things that are on this particular form, or for any form for that matter. But I'll leave that as an exercise for you, because this is enough information to get you started performing client-side validation. So let's move on.